It was like just such a trick thing. The engine was a turd. I had 28 naked people in my pool there once. It was a great night. And the money's never really recovered in BSB for most people, unfortunately. You know, it's one of the great tragedies of BSB. Whack! I go up the curb, my front tucks, right, completely tucks. I got it on my knee. I had a brilliant time.
We see him regularly on Eurosport's Bennett's British Superbike coverage and World Superbike coverage. So we went down to find out just a little bit more about his career in Grand Prix racing, how he started out in 250s, his time in World Superbikes, and then back to the Bennett's British Superbike before being handed a mic by Eurosport and never looking back. That's James Haydon. This is Off Track, the motorcycle racing podcast. James Haydon, welcome to the show. How are you, mate?
Very good, very good. Thanks for coming down, and yeah, nice for you to be here.
It's super beautiful part of the world and beautiful home you've got.
Thank you very much.
Part and parcel of your life away from the track now with the building work and the business side of things. You're keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, you know, you have to sort of move on after racing. You know, I love still being involved with, you know, BSB and World Superbikes, and, you know, we've got a great team, you know, that I really enjoy those weekends away. But yeah, I kind of gradually stumbled into property development, and you know, it's been a really nice journey and something that I love, and I'd never expected to love anything else again after racing. And although it's very different, you don't get that immediate kind of rushy, scary buzz. You know, you get this tremendous sense of well-being and happiness at the end when you've built something you're super proud of and that you love, and you know, that will be there long after I'm dead and gone. So yeah, it's all good.
I guess it's something that's really necessary when you finish your racing career, because sometimes you get to choose when you finish, sometimes you don't get to choose when you finish. So having the property background and investing wisely.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird the way I kind of came out, because it wasn't, you know, in some ways it was just a bit unfortunate. The credit crunch came, and, you know, the money sort of disappeared overnight. 2008, you know, I was signed for Hawk, and, you know, they phoned me up and said, don't know what's going on, we're losing our sponsors. You know, would you be, you know, I'd had a nice salary and bonuses, and my motorhome bought, and my leathers made, and everything sprayed up, and they just went, would you ride for nothing? And I was like, no, you know, I had like a few houses and kids and like bits and bobs, and I was, you know, I sort of thought, oh, I'll sit it out for a bit, and then Eurosport said, well, if you're sitting out, would you come and work for us for a little bit? And so it kind of wasn't like I got a last race and did big wheelies and said goodbye to everyone. It kind of, you know, it just sort of, the volume just sort of slowly got turned down, and, you know, I kept thinking I'm going to race again, and then, you know, and the money's never really recovered in BSB for most people, unfortunately. You know, it's one of the great tragedies of BSB, as far as I'm concerned. You know, because everyone puts their lives at the risk, they dedicate themselves, and, you know, it's a sort of sport people should be coming out of, you know, with a nice nest egg and stuff behind them. But, you know, you can only live your own life and do your own things. But yeah, it was kind of weird. But, you know, and also that first few years after coming out was, you know, incredibly difficult. You know, it was like losing a leg. You know, I kind of, because ever since I was 8 years old, it was all I wanted to do. It was what I trained for. It was what I worked for. You know, when you're 16, 17, everyone's going out to parties and you're getting in your home with your mum and dad, and you're going off racing, and, you know, and sort of sacrificing what seems like a lot at the time. But, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's all part of the journey. So kind of to suddenly, I hadn't kind of realised till I came out that kind of I was my job was me. So it took a little bit of filtering out. I can also really understand why some sports people kind of go off the rails a little bit, or lose it, or go into depression, or all those sort of things. I think, you know, I had probably a little bit of all of those, you know, in those sort of first few years, and until I found my feet again, and you know, and I absolutely love my life now, and I don't miss racing, you know, anymore. It's not something, you know, I kind of, you know, I love it still, and, you know, I still love to go fast, and but, you know, it's you know, it was a wonderful part of my life, but it's, you know, the next stage of my life now, you know, wife, kids, and a business that's in a different direction.
Tell me about those early days starting out racing.
Yeah, so I mean, my dad, he was a doctor, but he loved cars. He loved motorcycles. He never raced or anything. He didn't know anyone that raced, but he went to the TT every year since '78, I think it was, when Hailwood came back and won on the Ducati. And so he could do that every year. And he'd bring back programs, and remember the old sort of Kenny Roberts T-shirts and stuff like that. And, I'd read them front to cover. And he got motorcycle news every week, so I'd always be like studying that. And I just, they just really sung to my soul, and I hassled him, and he got me a little TY80 when I was 8. And I had a couple of friends around where we were that also had bikes, and we just come home from school, chuck our bags off, take them up the woods, and we'd just ride around. Had to be back before it was dark. Sometimes the police come and turf us off, sometimes they wouldn't. And so we did that, and we did that for a few years. And my dad worked very, very hard. And then one day he came back as I was pushing out the drive, and he's like, "Oh, come and have a watch." So I said, "Right, Dad, stand here," right? Because it was like our favourite corner, because it was like a 4th gear straight down to like a little right hand, and we'd slide them coming out. And so we came round, and me and my friend were cutting up, and we came out sideways and tore off. And the next lap, my dad's in a suit. It's like jumping up and down. He's like, "Jesus Christ, stop." He goes, "You guys are going to kill someone." He goes, "We've got to get you on a track." And he sort of said to my friend, he's like, "Where do you live?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going to live somewhere over there." And so he took us both to his mum's, and he said, "Look, I've seen the boys going around. I think they need to go on a track." He goes, "I'll buy a van. I'll take him, if you pay for a bike, and we'll go together." So we started motocrossing. And I loved motocross, still love motocross and enduro and off-roading, because it was kind of where it was from. It was also just, how I learned to ride, a lot of back brakes, sliding it in, getting things sideways, which I absolutely love, whether it be a bike, car, boat, whatever. And we did that, and I got good enough, I was going to the nationals, qualifying top 40s, and against, it's funny enough, when we're looking through these old programs now, Hodgie sent me one the other day, and it was, us two at the Ellsworth National, and, I think, I was just starting to get really good at motocross when I was coming up to 16, but I just wanted to go road racing. And, I had a massive burning desire, and it was a big battle with my parents because they didn't want me to do it, particularly. But after a lot of persuasion, and obviously my dad was still going to the TT, and once I got to about 13, 14, he'd take me for practice week, which is like the half-term week actually. So we'd go over there and we'd do practice week, and then I'd come back. But he's only, he said, "Right, I'm going to support you for 2 years." He said, "But you got to promise me you're never going to do road racing." That's the deal. And if you don't get picked up and sponsored, you quit this stupid idea of being a motorcycle racer, and you can go back and get some qualifications and go and get a proper job. So that was the deal. And so we started off the little TZR 125 in something called mini stocks, which was a brilliant class. Neil Hodgson was in it, funny enough. So we did really well. I ended up finished second in the British Championship in that year. It was like sponsored by sort of Shell Gemini, and won a lot of races. And then I only lost championship because I crashed. I lost the front at Snetterton, the second last round, and and Dad said, "Oh yeah, why'd you crash?" I was like, I don't really know. And we had a guy next to us. He had a reverse cylinder Marlboro TZ250, and he's like, and he kind of wonders over. He's having a chat. We've been chatting to him all weekend because I love those bikes. I mean, I've got one in the garage, but and he comes over and he puts his finger in the tyre, and he's like, when did you last change the tyres?" We're like, "Well, we haven't changed the tyres." He said, "There's nothing wrong. They still got grip on them." Because we used to motocross where but we didn't know anything at all, right? So we'd bought the bike with those tyres on. We'd run it all season with those tyres on, and they were like hard as rock, right? And so anyway, put some new tyres on. So and it's funny that, because most people go racing, have an uncle or a dad or someone they know.
There's usually a bit of knowledge in there,
raced,
isn't there?
right? Whereas we didn't know anything. But also one of the real lovely things about that was my parents just used to go, "Did you enjoy it?" It was never like, "Should you do this? Should you do that?" We got up motocross. It was like motocross dad whacking and "What are you doing?" And, whereas it kind of, for me, it was all about fun and enjoyment. So we did that, had a good sort of first year. And then the next year we got a bit of help from the local motorcycle shop, someone called Ford and Ellis. It was owned by Charlie Ford in Chesham. And we got an RGV 250 on like a deal through them with a race kit for Supersport 400 and a little RS 125. And I put it on the RS125 on pole at Brands Hatch in the British Championship. Stashed it massively, took out about 7 people at Druids. And then we did super teams as well with, John McGuinness, David Jeffries, Michael Rutter. It was, we're all on these RGV 250s. I won a lot of races, crashed quite a bit. But I was just head over heels in love with it. And as we got towards the end of that season, that was 91, I was thinking shit, because my dad's saying, look, you don't get picked up and done. It's game over. And so I was kind of, I was hoping, and also that we were doing a British Championship, which I was going to get in top 10s in, as a 17-year-old that never done it before. There was a big race I can remember at Alton Park where Foggy came on a Castrol Honda NC30 and Whittam was there on factory bikes, and it was kind of, so you were racing against some really good guys. And so we did that. Got to the end of the year, and I'd done all right, but I was phoning round and round and round, and nothing was really sort of happening. And then I got a phone call out the blue from Ron Haslam, and one said, look, Donington Park, who obviously have the Grand Prix, they've looked at the success of Team Italia, and, they want to try and start a British version, Team Great Britain. I'm going to run it, be the spearhead. I'm going to help you out with track time. Would you come and do a test? And so I went to do this test, and there's some big names there, Darren Mitchell, who tragically got killed at Brands, but, he was already, quite a good name in it. One of the Vincent brothers was there. There was about 6 or 7 of us. I'd never ridden a TZ250, but I just got on it, and I was like, wow. Like Ron behind me. I remember having this little slide out of Redgate, and I kept it going. I was like, right, I've got to go as fast as I can. I can't crash it, right? So I was kind of like, did my best. I wasn't the quickest, but went and said thank you at the end, and really enjoyed that. And and everything crossed, and like a week later, we got the phone call and said, you got it. And thank goodness to Ron and Anne, because obviously that was those 2 years I spent with them. Not only did I just learn so much, grew so much, obviously it was just an amazing opportunity, and I have kind of everything to thank for them. And they also became like another mum and dad. And I moved up to Smalley in Derbyshire, left home, never went back, and, training every day, you're working on the bikes, and, we had our own workshops, and, we'd be setting up the squish and doing, stripping them down, and it was great. And he suddenly lived in this big farm, and you could walk along with guns and shoot stuff, and just sort of, we had the key for the canal, and in the summer everyone piling the lock in the canal, and we'd open it up and all get flushed out, and sort of, it was just, after a doctor's son from Buckinghamshire and Amersham to suddenly go up there and have this freedom, and, all the farm workers out there as well, and they'd be out on a Friday as well, so you go into town and have a good time. And so it was a really amazing thing. And I owe the Haslams, and Robert Fennell, who's totally moved on as well from Donington Park, but them giving me that opportunity, it launched my career, and it, without them I couldn't have done it. And as I say, I just learned so much. Those 250s are just beautiful bikes, because it's very rare you have a bike that's got the right sort of balance of weight and power. Most bikes are overpowered or underpowered, and whereas the 250s, just like a little sort of beautiful fencing sword or something. It's just all perfect, and they're quick. And also the 250s then was like a who's who, whether it be Bosworth, Ian McConaughey that won a Grand Prix, Alan Carter that won a Grand Prix. You had Steve Salford. There was 10 or 12 super fast guys. Ian Newton, going off doing the European Championships. So, and I was instantly competitive. I won races in my first year. And did really well. And then, on the first year, at 92, I had a 91 bike. And then for 93, they gave me a 93 Yamaha. And, we were I had finished second in the British Championship, but I should have won it that year. The BBC at Snetterton asked if they could have a camera on my bike. which we should have said no on because it's not like today. It was a great big heavy.
Not the lipstick size one.
Right, it was like that, weighed a ton, and we were starting to go. I thought my rear wheel spindle was coming loose because I could just feel this knocking. But it turned out the camera, which was a great big block, had come loose. And as I went into Russell's, it just went in, locked the back wheel, high-sided me, and it was a 6-round British Championship then. And I won 3 of the rounds. And that cost me the championship by a few points. And, so that was, but, again, it's part of racing, shit happens, but it's kind of, again, on hindsight and a bit more intelligence, you'd have said, no, I'm not running that at this point in the season. But it was a really, really sort of, it was a great year. And then they said for the 500 Grand Prix, and they're going to hire me a 500 Rock, and I was 19 years old, I'm in my 3rd year of racing, and now I am lined up on the grids with Kevin Schwantz and Mick Doohan, and, it was like, wow, and I ended up finishing 11th, the youngest ever point scorer in 500s at that point in time, and it was just a great opportunity, and it was also, one of those ones where, you kind of thought, I was inexperienced, but, I was like, no one was doing anything that I felt I couldn't, which was really good. So then at the end of that year, I honestly, I look back on that and it's still some of the fondest times I had. It was absolutely brilliant. I love life anyway. I mean, life is great, but it was just it was a brilliant time. Then 94, there was a debate, in one way I should have maybe stayed there, won the British Championship and moved on. But I was always really hungry, maybe a bit too hungry to try and sort of get to the next level. I knew I could beat people in the 250s. So it was like, and I got offered the chance to ride the RC45 for Med. And I said it with Ron, and he kind of was in two minds. Do you want to go Superbikes? But Superbikes was quite big in Britain, and also the RC30 was one of my favourite motorcycles ever, and I'll never forget walking into the NEC bike show, seeing it rotate on this stand, and I was just like, wow, and that bike was a legendary race motorcycle. I thought, well, the RC45 should be, hopefully something similar. Little did we know, Stuart Hicken was running it. He had a deal with Penske, the car suspension people, and they were building the suspension for it, which was just absolute shite. But we didn't really know that. I didn't really know, enough. Obviously I'd learned a lot on 250s, about head angle and rake and, getting the bike set up and rebound and compressions and spring rates. And, I learned so much on how I wanted a motorcycle. This felt like a big soft armchair, but it was a little bit evil with that Penske on it. Well, they didn't stop me. I won a round of the British Championship by 18 seconds, as a 20-year-old, and then, but it wasn't going on. I was crashing it a lot, but I couldn't really understand why, because I couldn't really get much feel from it. And me and Stuart weren't, he just kept telling me to slow down, it would not kill. I was running this berm a bit like a motocross bike, and he was really annoyed about it. He said, it's not the way to do it. And so we ended up sort of splitting it. Obviously it was great to get that win, but we ended up sort of parting directions. And then a chap called Jim McArdle, an Irishman, phoned me up, who ended up running the TDK 250 Grand Prix team with Van der Goldberg. But there was a team called Beckett. They were running like quite a standard Honda in Grand Prix, actually on Yokohamas, which was Jokohamas as everyone called them then. But I got on it, and first race, ever I'd done abroad was Czech Republic, Brno, and I diced the whole dice with this unknown chap called Carlos Checa, and he just beat me for the last point, and, but I was 16th, but, I was also, they'd never had anyone, even in the top 20, so they were like over the moon. I did a couple more races for them, couldn't quite, again, I know it sounds like a bad workman blames his tools, but as you know, everyone was on Dunlop's side, and we were the only people on Yokohama's. And
no support in the paddock for it.
And there was exactly that. So you didn't know quite what you were getting. I ended up having the hugest high side ever at Laguna Seca. And as you come down the corkscrew, that next left, which is fourth gear flat, and thank goodness for air fence, because I made it upside down all the way from the track into the air fence, 100 mile an hour. Just let go on me and bang. Yeah, it was kind of, it was an interesting time. And so I did a couple of Grand Prix. It didn't really work out. You couldn't, I was riding the packages as hard as it could be ridden. And then they said, look, do you want to come back into a couple of rounds of the British Championship? So I did, I won those. And then, it was for 95, it was then all sort of where'd you go? But from when I was like 15, 16, I'd spend my summer holiday, I'd have little James Haydon things made up with all my things and why he should sponsor me. And my parents would drop me, I'd be in a little fitting suit. They'd drop me at like local industrial estates, and I'd spend all day knocking on doors, putting out my CV, seeing and I managed to pick up a sponsor through it. A company called Aquavin, who, they were the CS group, but their brand that they pushed was a type of plastic called Aquavin. And they stayed with me for years, but it started off with them then. And Steve Harris had seen me ride and had been quite impressed, with what I'd done on that bike in Grand Prix. So, he phoned me up and said, look, do you want to come and ride for us? And I was like, in 500 Grand Prix, I was 21 years old. I was like, yup. So, suddenly the next thing I knew, I signed up to go to 500 Grand Prix. And it was, the bikes were just getting a little tired, those 3-4 500s then. It moved on a bit. But, I was regularly, me and McWilliams and Emmett, always dice out for top privateer. Donington Park, I actually qualified top privateer. I was 1.1 seconds off doing on pole, and I was 24 kilometres an hour slower down the speed trap at Donington. And then in the race, I was having a good race in the top 10, and I came together with Norik Abe, bless his soul, and down we both went. I took him out, I had to go around to the multiple Yamaha team, and so sorry. But I was the thing was, I was in a queue of them. I knew if I could get through and run my lines, I felt I could beat a lot of them.
Your pace.
Yeah, and it was just, I'd just given it that fraction too much, and those carbon brakes, and I was that horrible moment when oh Jesus, it's not. I'm not taking out many people in my career, but as I was heading towards it, and there was Alberto Puig, and there was a few others, and I'm just like, oh, can I just clip Abe's back wheel, but we had some good races. I had a top result of ninth, top 10 in 500s. And remember, there was 12 factory bikes, and and I loved it. And they wanted me to stay. Paget sort of gave me an offer, and then there was the WCM team, which Hodgson had ridden for, Mackenzie had ridden for beforehand, and they were a real quality set up. Mike Webb, who's now sort of the Grand Prix chief technician or whatever, or he was sort of their chief mechanic, and they offered me a really good package, a great salary, and come and ride for us. So I was like, brilliant! I couldn't believe it. And after also they those 500s were difficult. 1 millimeter wrong on the throttle with the wrong angle. First thing you're upside down. But when you were in their zone, I mean, they were so incredible to ride. I would love one of those again one day, because you could just, 120 kilos, 160 brake horsepower, and just, and you had to keep them between 8 and 12 and a half, and it was like, but they were, they were a lovely thing. And so I thought, this is it, this is going to be great. And then just before the season started, Dunlop pulled out, and they were sort of synonymous with Dunlop, that team. Michelin couldn't handle everyone, and we just had, the tyres were awful. You just got sort of the leftovers.
B and C tyres.
You'd look on your thing, and none of you would have, the same tyres, even at the privateers. It was just kind of what you got. So I struggled like mad on that bike because I just couldn't get a feeling on it. I hated it. And I kept saying, look, we need to test. We didn't have any money to test. They'd sacked the whole team, and it was ended up in they were literally a shed. It was in a little shed in Lincolnshire that you could kind of walk around. That was the workshop, and it just wasn't what I wanted. I kept trying my best. I actually got, I think, 8th in the French Grand Prix, but more because when people had crashed, then I think I might have been top privateer, but it was kind of that was my best result. But I did it on. I never, that my Harris, when I got my Harris good for Steve Harris, God, I could ride that thing. But, it went run a lot, third gear would go or something. We had a lot of breakdowns. I crashed it a few times. But it was something I could grab by the scruff of the neck. Whereas that rock on those crappy Michelins, I could never, I can't say I ever could got that, got the feeling that I needed from it. And I ended up breaking my ankle at Imola, crashing in the race, and that was that. So that then saw the end of the season. I got some offers again to stay, but I knew the V4s were going to be another year older.
Yeah.
And I really wasn't convinced that was the way forward. Plus, I kind of, as nice as it was to be sort of, to get a top 10, it didn't really sink to my soul. And I thought, do you know what, I want to be competitive again. But it's not enough for me to be in the World Championship and to go around and whatever, because
I don't want to make up the numbers, do you?
No, I didn't want to make up the numbers. So I got an offer to ride for a team called Giacomoto, and they'd run Paolo Casali he'd won the 600 World Championship. Yes. And then he'd moved up to Superbikes, and he'd done all right. He'd had some good results. They said, well, look, come and have a test. And I rode his bike, and I fucking loved it. And it was the first time I got on the Ducati, and I broke the lap record of Cartagena on it, and I'm like, I came back, I was like, Dad, this is going to be ace. And that was 97, and so it was the 90. So that was the 97. So I think it was the 96 916 or 996 that was the real dog. They got it wrong.
Yes.
Right. And so I think I was on a 95.
That's the year
one.
Castrol Honda won the World Superbikes, wasn't it?
So whichever way it was, there was 1 year.
Yeah.
I think it's the 96 that Ducati got it slightly wrong.
Yeah.
And Foggy hated that bike. And but when I got to the first race, the bike I'd done all my testing on, they'd sold it. And they said, we've managed to get you like a Foggy's last year's bike, and this thing was horrid, right? And the team was, Casli's team was a great little unit. My guys, they'd kind of sort of bodged together. My chief mechanic, he had been working in a Vespa shop in Milan, never been a race mechanic.
What?
We got there. I had 21 breakdowns that year, but silly stuff like fairings would fly off. But we got to the Misano round, and I was just struggling. I was like, begged them, please, can we have the old chassis? But you weren't allowed to mix 1 year's chassis with another one's engine. But I just said, look, can we do whatever? Can I just get the old bike back? I can ride that bike. I can't this thing. And no one had really known how much they'd struggled with it. I think they made the chassis too rigid that year. So we struggled with it, and then the engine we had was pretty crap. And so Ducati said, okay, after a load of fuss, they gave us the engine. We started up in the pit lane at the Misano World Superbikes, seized up. The guy forgot to put any oil in it. So we put the engine back in. I missed most of the session, went out. On my second flying lap coming in, it was Misano was the other way around then. Yeah. So it was a right-hander on start finish straight, tipped it in, massive crash, and he forgot to do the sun plug up. Sun plug come undone, covered the back tire in oil, popped all my clavicle and stuff. So it was kind of, and actually, it was all Dr. Costa, they kind of got it. Clavicles are awkward things, but I, racing a couple of weeks later, and we went to Albacete, and And in practice, there's a really fast left-hander around the back of the pits. Tipped it in there, the handlebar just shot forward, picked it up, it's like 110 mile an hour, maybe more. Danced my way through the bars, shaking everywhere, nearly hit the tar wall, got it back on, came back in, I went crazy. I'm like, for God's sake, I came back to my mum and dad and said, I said, nothing ever bloody kill me on this. It's a death trap, right? And then, oh, no. Then in the race, exactly the same thing happened, right? Exactly the same place, right? The bar just came loose, almost identical thing. I stopped, threw it on the ground. I walked back to my home, I had all my stuff on, my scooter, everything was parked outside the garage. I unhooked my lead for my motorhome, sending all my gear, right, got fucking drove off, and I was out of the circuit before I took my helmet off, right, with all my levers. Phoned me up, James, where are you? And I was like, fuck you, and bloody kill me. I said, I'm done. I said, I'm not doing it, I'm done. But yeah, another race, I said, I'm not racing for you ever again, it's a bloody joke. So then they, and we'll kind of come back to it later, they gave me a court summons. Colin Schiller, who ran fast bikes, had done part of the deal, and as part of the deal, he had agreed to provide 25 grand towards the season.
Yes.
Which they never came up with. They got to put a legal proceedings against me in the Italian courts, which we'll come back to in a bit. So that was that. So I just said stuff that. So then, it had been such a horrid year. I'd lost a bit of my confidence, and I was like, I thought, do you know what? Go back. But British Superbikes was really good, so I thought, try and go back to British Superbikes, and actually just rebuild from there. And then Paul Denning rang me up out of the blue. He'd just started, he was like second, third year into a team, and he's like, he said, James, look, starting you, I watched you at the 500 Grand Prix when you and Ame came together, and I was like, but I was super impressed.
It's an opening gambit, isn't it? We've watched you take another rider out. Yeah. Will you come and ride for me?
But he just said, what you are, was watching you spin it coming out of like the hairpin, and he's like, Will you come and I'd love you to come on board with us, and it was a little salary, and it was like bonuses, and I was like, yeah, teammates with Terry Reimer, and he goes, we've got a little bit of support from Suzuki as well. So I was like, brilliant. So we were like the Sony mini disc Suzukis, and so we got to what I remember about that is we get to, so the first test is up at Croft. They've only built one bike, right? So Terry was like, Terry Ryan was like a big star, right? So he had a Ferrari 355. I had this little crappy old Alfa Romeo 2000 GTV, like an 84, beautiful looking thing with little twin lights. But anyway, Terry's like, look, you come with me, Junior. Always call me Junior, right? He's like, yeah. So we go up, and I love Terry. He's a brilliant
superb guy,
absolute brilliant bloke. Anyway, we're going up, and he's like, look, we got a couple of days test here. We've only got one bike, so just go easy. Don't do anything silly. I was like, no. I was excited, but I was like, no, of course not. So we get there. The second lap, Terry has the biggest accident ever.
No.
Sticks the bike out the circuit into a tree. It's absolutely fucked. So he comes back in the pits. I was like, you're not calling me Junior ever again. Right? And he's like, it was a quiet journey home. Right? And but we got on there. I had a great year with him. Won a round of the British Championship. I got a podium in my first race at Brands Hatch, first round of BSB. A lot of people had started, I'm not sure, so to come back, grab a third in the first race of the year, get some podiums. I won at Donington. I won at Silverstone. So it was really good. And then the next year, the fuel injected GSX-R 750 came out, and they said, will you be our number one rider for that? We got you and the Australian champion Marty Craggill. Nice salary, good bonuses, good deal. So I was like, yeah. And that was 99, and we turned to the Clarion.
That was Clarion Suzuki, wasn't it?
And I won more races than anyone on a 4-cylinder that year. I crashed a few times, but again, when I say crashed a few times, you're talking in races 3 or 4 times in a 24 race season. You're not talking. Makes me laugh sometimes. So everyone always says, "Oh, what a crasher!" But actually, you look at it compared to some of these guys now, and I'm like, "What? You what? I'd crash 2-3 times in a race in the season. I might have big ones in practice and stuff, but
That's
it was
what
like
practice is for."
And but I didn't. I kind of it would happen sometimes, but that's what we're talking about. And it was a really good year. I led the championship for a lot of it. Obviously, Bayliss. I was riding against the Ducatis, and there used to be a significant difference in those 1,000 cc's and the 750s. Not when you were on full throttle, but just coming off the turn
where you needed the most,
where you needed that torque. They were just like, and all year I was like, God, I was watching what Bayliss could do, and he could like fire it from anywhere. And we had some amazing battles, me and Bayliss, 4 or 5 times on the last lap and beating each other. And like I said, I won 4 races and multiple podiums. And Walker won 3 races on the 4-cylinder. He was the next man down. Marty Drago, my teammate, didn't even get on the podium. And it's sort of, but I really loved that. And it was a very hard decision because Paul and his boys, I loved to bits, but I just wanted to be on a Ducati. I was like, I haven't watched them. I thought, do you know what? I need to be on one of those. And I'd picked up at the end of that year, Aiwa, the Japanese electronics giant, who then came in to sponsor quite heavily. I picked them up as a personal sponsor. I also brought them in as a team sponsor. And got offered a few different things, but I decided on the Red Bull Ducati alongside John Reynolds. First time I rode it, I was like, you cheating bastards. I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I can't believe it. It was an absolute weapon. It was 996. It was just beautiful. Roger Marshall was in charge, obviously Ben Atkins up top. I had Chris Anderson was my chief mechanic, and a proper data man, and Steve Thompson, and it was a proper setup, and it was great. I was leading the championship by around 5-6. I won 5 races that year, lots of podiums, and then we were coming home from a test, and I was with my team manager. We were in his car coming down the M1, and there was a massive pile up. It was like 11 car pile up that we were involved in, and I turned around to because we had smashed in. There was loads, and I turned around, and as I turned around, we got cannon from behind, and I didn't know at the time, but it prolapsed this in between C5 and C6 in my neck. And then the next race was Alton Park, and I'm out in front, and my arm just starts to go completely dead, right? And I couldn't work out. My neck had been stiff. I mean, these days you went straight to hospital. I won hundreds of thousands of pounds on some bloody, law case. But it was kind of, it was just what it was at the time. And being a racer, you kind of just get on with things. And but I remember I was, for a bit I tried leaning across, and I was having to roll my hand on the back like that to keep it throttle full on the back straight, and it was like, I was trying to dangle it, and it was, I couldn't understand it. It was just completely numb. I've been waking up in the night a bit before that, and I couldn't feel my arm at all, and I thought I'd been sleeping like funny or something. And anyway, to cut a long story short, that really had a huge impact on my season, and it took about 6 or 7 weeks before we worked out what it was. Just got it scanned, diagnosed it, and then I had to see a special Mackenzie trained physio who gave me a load of exercises that help. It's like a bar of soap that help kind of push it back in,
gently ease it back into place.
But it took months, and it actually ruined my season. I finished 4th. I could have still won it in theory on the last round, but actually it was but it was a very difficult thing because I joined that. The whole team was set up around John Reynolds, right? John named his son Ben after Ben Atkins, and they kind of wanted a good second rider. They didn't want one quite as good as that, if I'm honest, right? And so we had a few real battles, and I was still well in with the chance for the championship. And the round before, they said, "Look, you're not to beat John Reynolds." he's got a better chance than you winning the championship, which he did have. So you're not to beat him, right? And it was like, they wouldn't have even run the race now. It was like torrential rain, right? And there's like there's a whole load of us. There's like about 7 of us in the row. The first 2 have got away, and it goes from like 3rd to 9th or something in a row in the pouring rain. So I got to the head of it because I like the wet anyway, and I just, I didn't want all the shit on my visor. I'm kind of like, and I'd already decided, I spoke to my dad, okay, well, I've just got to take it on the chin. I watched Hodgson the year before get booed at Brands for letting Bayliss pass, and I didn't want to make it look like that because I didn't want to be booed, and I didn't really. Also, me and John earlier in the season, John had put me on the curb going over Clay Hill, right, and I tucked my front and it slid off the thing and it gripped, and I was like, God, I was like, if I'd gone down there now...
On the inside over the crest?
Yeah, it just took my front out, pushed me onto the thing, around the outside. He'd got a slightly better drive. And it was one of the most aggressive... Listen, I get on great with John Reynolds now. We're at the heat of the battle, so I'm not... racing, but
it's of its time, isn't it?
But it was a really horrific move.
Yeah,
and
because that's seriously fast through there, and not a lot of runoff.
Down...
Or at the time, there wasn't a lot of runoff.
Yeah, there wasn't. Had I gone down, who knows what may have happened, So anyway, we fell out there and then because we got back. It was shouting. We had to be split up because I was like, trying to kill blah blah blah. So we got to that last round. They're like, "Oh, you got to help John." I was like, "Okay." So anyway, John then, so we're in such a group. You're going down the street. You can see like 8, 9 pit boards. And I thought, what I'm going to have to do is just run my race. As he gets towards the end, I'm going to have to try and suss out where he is.
Yes, just your lap time accordingly.
And just sort of do something, right? And then coming into Druids, and he comes right round the outside of me, right? And he just, as we're coming in, does almost identical things again, just whack. I go up the curb, my front tucks, right? Complete tucks. I got it on my knee, it comes down, and it slides a bit, grips, puts me up. And I'm like, you bastard. Right, I was like, and I kind of like the red mist came down, right, and so I beat him, and when I got back in, Joe's crying, Ben's shouting at her, so I was pretty unhappy with him. Roger Marshall, who was amazing and was one of the best team managers I've ever worked with. I love Roger Marshall. He's trying to calm everything down. Ben's like, that's it, you're fired, you're out, you're fucking blah, blah, blah. I was like, don't touch me. I tried to explain, but it wasn't having any of it. But I had done a deal for the next year with Colin Wright to go to World Superbikes with GSE. And although we hadn't signed, we'd agreed all the terms, whatever, it was all done. And so that was that. And so in one way, I kind of thought, I wouldn't have done it. And had he not done that to me, I would have, it wouldn't have happened. And, there's very few things I'd ever change in my life. But if I could have that moment again, I'd change that.
Yeah.
And I'd have let him win. That was a mistake, and that was me just seeing red when I shouldn't have done. But it's a build-up. It's not one incident. It was a build-up of a season's worth. And and I can remember Joe saying, I was out, I was leading. I can't remember what race I was leading at, and like Ben saying, "Look, tell him to fill in so he can let John pass." And like, she's thinking, "Oh, what the fuck? He's racing as well." And that was like early on in the season. I'm leading the championship. I was still leading it around 5 or 6. So anyway, he's like, "You're not riding." Anyway, Roger talked him down, and he's like, "Right, okay, you can ride." So the next race, I just had to kind of almost like just do sort of follow my leader, which I did. We got to Donington, which was the final race of the year, and they're like, "You cannot be John." Right? So, and it's really hard actually to, if you race a certain way. I've never done a race ever where I kind of, it was Walker, Hodgson, Reynolds, me, and we'd broken everyone else. Reynolds was at the back, but I couldn't pass him. And kind of somewhere I just sort of like, lost almost a bit of a concentration. So I just kind of like, I just sort of backed it off, brought it home in fourth. Reynolds was third. And then they said, can't beat him in the next one. It's the final race of the year. We're not going to ride with each other next year. So there's nothing they could do. So I went out and smoked everyone, won the race. Much to their annoyance, it didn't affect the championship anyway as it went. So there's that kind of like, it left a slightly bad taste in my mouth. But more importantly, Colin Wright came up and said, look, if you can't follow team orders, you're not riding for us. So the World Superbike ride that, the
rug pulled from under you.
Was gone, and they gave it to James Haydon, and obviously, he went on to...
It went on to be a double world champion, but there's not to say that the same thing couldn't happen. Different times.
But,
again, it is what it is, like you said before.
Exactly, and I've never been one, do you know what, maybe I'd have been killed at the first race, who knows?
Like, so what if doesn't work in racing, does it?
I mean? No, and I know these guys are like, I could have done that, And I always give the story. I was once sat on a plane next to a guy who grew up playing football with Gary Lineker and reckoned he was better than Gary Lineker.
Wow.
And he was in his 50s and he had this chip on his shoulder, still bitter about it. And I was like, wow, I am never going to be like that. No. And like that decision, that was a decision, that was my decision. I've lived with it. And it's like, but also I'm sitting in my house with 3 beautiful kids and a wife, and it's sort of, stuff happens. So it's kind of, that's just the way it went. But it was also, one of those ones where you're like, because that felt like possibly, my chance. Yeah. And you have to be a bit lucky here now and again. You create a bit of your own luck, but that was...
No question.
That was that. So in 2001, I really wanted to stay on Ducati. Couldn't. There wasn't... GSE were moving to World Superbike, Red Bull, Red Bull, the actual company, would have loved me to stay, but obviously with the way it all hands out and whatever, it was that. And actually, again, I'd like to say on that point, they're both lovely people. Racing's a very emotional thing. I get on really well with John now, really nice with Ben, and I'm thankful for what they gave me. But at the time, I was a young, hungry rider. Also and it was just a couple of things even at the end of that season, because the World Superbike at Brands, I qualified, I could only do, my nerve problem was so bad, I could only do 3 or 4 laps. I qualified at front row, right? I was 0.1 of a second off pole, right? And, but I couldn't race, and my arm was going dead. So I had to pull out of the World Superbikes, which John Reynolds won a round of.
He did, yeah.
And again, it was like, it was just one of those ones where I was like, again, you just don't know. I had that, would I have been on a podium? Could I have won that? Yes, absolutely, right? So it was kind of, I love that. It's one of my favourite circuits. So, things happen like that. So anyway, that season was gone. Rob Mack offered me the R7. I loved riding for Rob Mack. Not only is he a brilliant bloke, but I had Eddie Marsh, who's amazing. Ian, I had Chunky. I had like a really great team. I loved them dearly. Yamaha were brilliant. The R7 was just like a little samurai sword. That thing was like just beautiful. And I had Norrie Hager's factory magnesium forks. It was like just such a trick thing. The engine was a turd, right? But like if you were on a clear track, you were fine.
Yes.
Right? Because you could run the corner speeds. A bit like
as long as you could run your own
Quartararo sort of now with it, right? You know what I mean? He's like, if he's on a clear track, he can do what he wants. But if you get bulked and you can't pick up the throttle where you need to and run your line, and the trouble with those Ducatis, they could park it anyway and go, brop, and they were gone. Again, a great, I think I had 20 podiums, right? And, it was a really good season. I should have won a race. It's a very famous one when I crashed at Mallory.
I was there for that.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, I should have won one. There was some future. I should have won it. I was trying to be too clever at Thruxton. I didn't want to lead onto the back straight, which I should have done because I'd actually broken them enough that I could have done. There's little bits, but again, it is what it is, right?
100%, yeah.
But I also had a great season. And Iowa had they had the Iowa girls, they had an Iowa Cannon where they go around the circuit firing T-shirts and, profile-wise as well. They've used me in all their advertising
Tony
campaigns.
Carter, the press officer as well. Big TC, he was part of the team, wasn't he?
And I just loved Rob Mack and I loved Adi and I loved the boys. And it was a really, really happy year, that. And it had been such a good year. For 2002, I got offers from pretty much everyone. Yeah. And
propelled into the shop window nicely, didn't
it? Because I was not only, not being big-headed but good rider, but also because I'd worked really hard behind the scenes as well. I'd also then, I had quite a lot of sponsorship that, could position as well. So it was, I was one of the top earners, in it then, because I was getting paid well as a salary, I was getting paid well as bonuses, I could bring a sponsor that I got a slice of and so, they were really sort of good times. So, and they were just moving, they were changing the rules because the Ducatis were almost unstoppable. So they were saying, right, you can have thousands now. And then at Hodgson's wedding, I sat next to Mackenzie. Mackenzie had been testing the Petronas Grand Prix bike that they were building and said it's an absolute weapon. It's unbelievable, and then Foggy phoned me up and said, look, would you be interested? And I was like, no, I didn't, it was a 2-year project. He said, I've signed Troy Corsa. And I was like, what? Yeah. He said, I've signed Troy Corsa. He said, look, the first year, you're probably only going to get the latter half of the season, but you'll have done about 8,000 or 10,000 kilometres of testing before then. You'll also maybe have a chance to wildcard on the Grand Prix bike. And then the second year, full season. And I thought, Foggy, that man, he knows how to win. He's going to want to win, So I talked to my dad. We weren't sure. They said, "Look, come up, come and meet us." The money was fantastic. Yeah. Bonuses were fantastic, and Corsa had signed, and I was like, and I thought maybe this is the chance, because also I thought, well, also with all that testing, you're going to be razor sharp. The contract was a Petronas Formula One contract that must have been that thick, right? And anyway, after lots of in and ahhing, I decided to go for it. Again, one of my few regrets in life. I mean, don't get me wrong, because it helped set me up in many ways, right? But but it was the unhappiest, worst time of my life. I became completely depressed in the end. It was just horrid. And we obviously didn't ride at all in that first year. Carl Harris, he broke both his legs at Alton Park at Druids. Paul Denning phoned me up and said, look, James, you're not riding, right? Come and ride the bike. He said, it's going to be great for you because you're going to, you'll be keeping sharp. You'll know what the thousands are like. You'll know what's what. So I phoned Foggy up, really excited, because I was, some people say, oh, it's amazing. I was earning all this money, sat at home, not doing anything, but I was in the prime of my career. It was what my soul yearned for. It was all I wanted to do, and I couldn't do it. So I phoned Foggy up, and Foggy's like, no, you're not doing it. And I begged him. I was like, please, Carl, I said, I'm going nuts. I said, I can't, I need to ride. I said, do you know what? I said, have all your money back, right? I said, take the money back, just release me. I said, I can't do this, right? He's like, no, you're not doing it. 20 minutes later, I get faxed through a legal document, and it was going to cost like 800 grand to instantly get me out of the contract. And it was this and that. And it was like, and I was like, look, please, I said, no, that's it. So I couldn't. So I spent the whole year out, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful.
Apart from injury, you never expect to find yourself in that position, do you?
Not also when I was riding so well, super confident. I was just doing a great job. So, so it was kind of, and then obviously that bike was, without doubt, the worst bike I've ever ridden. I was unfortunate enough to be on it first year. We got there. We turned out that we were running on Dunlops. They'd had the massive tile battle the year before. Yeah. And they'd had, been the Bayliss the Bayliss Edwards one. It might have been the year before, but Michelin had pulled out. Everyone was on Dunlops, apart from the factory Ducati team, and but Foggy really wanted us on factory Michelins, and after some negotiation, Michelin said, "Look, we've got enough to run one rider." So we had a meeting. He said, "Look, whoever's fastest in first practice gets to get the the factory Michelins for that race." Well, a lot of the tracks I hadn't actually done.
No.
Right? It changed from
The calendar was completely different to MotoGP, pretty much, wasn't it? From
And
what
also,
you'd done
even
before.
for I'd done 95, 96 was, this is 8 years later or whatever, and even from the 97, I didn't do all the rounds of the World Championship. So we kept going. The engines, I'd had to leap off it because it'd be burst in flames. It also had this weird thing where it would run, fill the airbox up with oil, but still run until it overflowed. Then it would go on the exhaust and either burst into flames or you'd high side. I struggled like mad. It was just hideous. And so I was running Michelins, but I was running, by that stage, they were 3-year-old Michelins or 4-year-old Michelins, because the new ones were the rounded, the section ones, which is what we had one lot of, and what the factory of Laconia, and I think it was Laconia and Hodgson, on the Feeler Ducati.
On the Feeler bikes.
So they all had those, and I had the other ones that had been sitting in some container, for 4 years, right? And so they were uncompetitive, and I started to think, I struggled like mad. Then in Germany, my gearbox seized up, third gear, left hand. I've never actually watched it, but I went end over end over end over end, like neck, feet, and it was a horrific crash, and the selector fork had broken and locked the gearbox. And the next round was the Silverstone, and I was on the front cover of the program, and I couldn't even make it. And then they deducted me one. I actually missed 2 rounds. I think 2/12 of my salary for not making it. Right, and I'm like, but
hang on a minute.
This is.
If it was my fault, then fair enough.
Yeah.
Even then, you're still not doing it.
Yeah. So it was kind of that was funny, and I came out and I just could not. I got a best result of 7th in Japan. I was the first person to score points in the world on it. I had a few bits and bobs, but it was, I just couldn't, get near Corsa. And I just started, for the first time ever, I thought, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe this is me.
That's a difficult place to be.
Yeah, and it was horrible, and I thought, okay, maybe that's that. Then we got to Brands, and I out-qualified Corsa. So I was like over the moon, right? So I went down. I was
It's a fickle old business, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm like, brilliant. I got the Michelins, and the Bosworth's team manager is like, no, you're not having them. And I was like, what? But that's the deal. He goes, no, he's higher in the championship than you. You're not having them. And I was like, but we've had that deal. Right? He's like, I told you, you're not having them, right? So we had a bit of an argument. So I went to see Foggy. Foggy's got his mates, and we had this amazing hospitality, and it all looked brilliant. But we didn't have a suspension technician, right? It was €7,000, right? And anyway, I went to see Carl. He's drinking a beer with his boys, and I'm like, Carl, look, and he had me out, and he goes, to be honest, James, I'm not interested. I went, what? He said, I'm not interested. He goes, I'm more of just like a figurehead. I said, you're joking. I said, Carl, I've put my career on the line. I spent a year out, and he goes, I'm not, speak to Nigel. Nigel flipped out. How dare you go and speak to Carl? I said, well, what the hell? You've promised me something.
Yeah.
The first time all season, I'm actually in a position to use them, and I'm not allowed to use them. And then, I seemed to get less and less competitive towards Corsa, and I couldn't understand it. Was struggling for engines. My engines just went bang all the time. I think I had 23 breakdowns. I had 4 or 5 where I just had to leap off because it's in flames. And we got to Paul Ricard, and not Paul Ricard, we got to what's the one? North France,
Le Mans.
Magny-Cours.
Oh, Magny-Cours.
And there was a test there, and I went out. It was like a 2-day test. Of course, I couldn't come. I think maybe his wife was having a baby, or there was something weird. So last moment he couldn't come, and they brought out a super stock rider to ride Courser's bike. And anyway, my bike, second lap in, bang, gone wrong. It's got on the spare bike, first lap out, bang, that's gone wrong. And I've got no more engines. So they got no choice but to give me one of Courser's engines. Anyway, they stuck this fucking thing in, right? And I took 1.6 seconds off within 5 laps, right? I came in, I put Bosworth up against the garage wall. I was like, you absolute bastard. You know, how dare you? I said, I've been questioning, that's a completely different engine. And he goes, well, we haven't got enough to supply both of you. And Escal Suter was there. And Escal Suter said, I've been providing these for months, right? So Nigel had not been giving them to me, right? So I was absolutely livid,
yeah,
right?
Of course.
And it's, you know, it was coming up to the final round of the year, and I'm like, but it was also brilliant because I realised this is nothing to do with me, right? This is what
It's a double light bulb moment, isn't it? There's one for the engine and one for you, which is the most important.
And the tyres, right?
And the tyres as well, yeah.
Right. But anyway, so we got there for that round. I out-qualified Courser, right? You know, I put it on the second row, right? And like, unfortunately, I got my front wheel taken out on turn 2. You know, maybe I was being a bit brave or whatever, but someone came across it, just tucked my front. That was that. And then in the second one, it broke down anyway, right? But my spirit was back.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was so glad that I understood what the differences were. Don't get me wrong, Courser's an amazing rider, right? Absolute superb, brilliant bloke, you know. I mean, I used to spend 4 months a year, me and Joe, we had no kids, we'd go and fly over there and we'd spend, you know, December, January, February, March at his house because he had like hundreds of acres. He had a dirt oval, 18-kilometre enduro course, 2 motocross tracks, right? And like, you know, so we just go out there, no kids, and just hang out, ride motorbikes, play, and you know, and I've got a lot of time for him. I know he's had his issues, but he's but that was great. So I was like, you know, so I came out kind of, but also it had been 2 such difficult years, and I was really low. I was living in Andorra, and it was kind of, you know, I knew I had a short career. I knew, you know, I had to make it as efficient as possible.
Of course.
And I wanted to be based in mainland Europe anyway. But I kind of came out and you know, the phone didn't ring, but I, you know, should have been chasing and whatever. But I just really, you know, it was weird that the time when I got injured with my neck, and I was lucky not to break it, and I broke these vertebrae and prolapsed a disc in Germany, I told you about.
Yeah.
Before that meeting, I burst into tears in front of my wife, which I've never done, in the airport. I said, this bike's going to kill me or paralyse me. I said, I don't want to go. I said, that meeting in Germany, I said, I don't want to go. I said, I just got such a horrible feeling. I said, I just don't want to ride it anymore. I said, you know, and she's like, James, you're a professional motorcycle. Come on, you can do this. You're going to be fine. Don't worry. And then it did that. So, but I came out and I was like, I don't know. It's somehow I kind of gone from always being head over heels in love and addicted to motorcycles to then maybe I wasn't so much in love, but I loved them.
Yes.
Right? Do you know what I mean? And so I was kind of like, so for 2004, I don't know, I just said, Joe, do you know what? There's lots of things I can do. I'm not just about motorbikes. I don't know if I want this anymore. And I, you know, I'd also bought a house in south of France. It was a mega house on a mega plot. I had 28 naked people in my pool there once. It was a great night.
That's a story.
No,
stop. No, carry on.
But
these are the stories.
But we'd done it up, and I did, you know, it was kind of, we're living in Andorra, but we're going down and doing there, and I did that up, and that was also another little indication of the property, because when I came to sell that, you know, I did super well, and I realised there's a business there in south of France doing those and doing it for Europeans, not French. It's a different sort of style, more, a Scandinavian kind of look. But anyway, so we're it was the off season. We're just down there at this house, and I was kind of like, I said, I don't know if I don't want to do this anymore. So I didn't phone anyone. No one really phoned me. It looked like sort of that might be it. Then Stuart, who's a little Scott rider like Steve Hislop, sort of Stuart.
Why have you taken the words out of my mouth? There's people screaming.
Exactly. I'm screaming at myself.
There's people screaming at the telly now.
Yeah, a brilliant 600 rider. I know his name, and I can't. I've got my complete mind blank right now. But
holy shit! I was only talking to Simo about him because he lives down the road from Simo.
Yeah, exactly. He's like Hoik or whatever, isn't he? Or just
he's a Hoik.
Yeah, and we know exactly, man. I mean, I'm embarrassed. I'm sorry.
So am I.
I know exactly who you are, but I can't.
You can see his face and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. He always looked like a little boy, no matter how old he was, wasn't he? But he was superb at 600. We'll get it there. We're going to shout it out.
We're going to get this halfway through.
And I can only apologise. But he got injured on Ducati. Stuart Easton. There you go. Stuart.
Sorry, Stuart.
Well, mate. Sorry, dude.
You're welcome on the show anytime. Sorry, mate.
So he got injured. They phoned up and said, do you want to come ride the bike at Snap? So I was like, yeah, definitely. So I'd sort of, by then also I'd realised, I am missing it. I do still want to do it. So I went down and it was all right. He was much lighter, so it kind of, we know testing to arrive straight at British Superbike. It was probably around 3 or 4 or something. No, I think it was around 2 or 3 because I started on round 4. So I rode that and I think I got 7th and 8th, right? So a couple of top 10s, but I didn't really race it. You know what I mean? I didn't quite get it what it was. Then Plater broke his leg. So Rob Mack phoned me up, round 4. James, do you want to come and ride the Yamaha, the R1, Virgin Mobile, your team? Yes.
Knockhill?
All right. So I was like, well, it wasn't Knockhill then. The first round was at Brands. But I got on it and it was Plater and Gary Mason.
Oh, yeah.
So they had their bikes were the same. The bike was bloody awful. Right, it wasn't, both great guys, but they'd kind of lost their way a bit. So got on it, top Yamaha, and just worked. It just needed a lot. The pivot point was wrong. It would just, the balance was wrong. So it took us a couple of races to get in and get it going. Then I started getting it in the area. That was also the first year electronics came out, and I remember it was raining, and we were on slicks, and Haslam came round the outside of me on the Ducati. It was just this blatant display, but he came round, and I'm going, and he's trying to like slide, and I just watched him go like that, and he just went, and he just drove around the outside of me, and away he went. And I came back in and I said, do you know what? If that's what that's going to be, that is going to change everything. I said, I'm not sure I like that. All those years of refining your skill and something.
It's a different era, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a different era. And I was like, don't get it wrong, because obviously from then on, from the next year, that's what I rode. But but anyway, so we got it good. Yes, it culminated in the win at Knockhill. Lots of podiums, finished top Yamaha. I've also got in my garage, Rob Mack goes, I joined, I did 2/3 of the seasons.
Yeah.
All the testing, all the practice, all the qualifying. I never crashed once. Right? Rob Mack goes, I can't believe this, James. He goes, look at your bodywork, right? And it's done so much. It's like peppered and stoned and chipped and whatever. He goes, we're going to have to actually retire your bodywork, right? Not because it's been damaged, but because it's just absolutely trashed, right?
So overuse.
Right? And so we had the bodywork. I've still got that hanging up in the garage. But and that was quite a nice thing as well. It was the first season I never crashed it. Yeah. And so, he gave me a really good offer for the next year. And then, but after Knockhill, Colin Wright phoned me back up again. And he said, look, we're coming back in. We're sponsored by Airwaves. It's going to be big. You and Haslam, good money. Bang, bang, bang. You want the ride? Yes. And he goes, second year, probably go World Superbikes. I was like, oh, well done, God, thanks, man. Right? And I was like, awesome. So got out. That was the 999. Also, I'd watched Hodgson on the Feeler one, and I've never been so jealous of someone's, apart from doing on his Repsol Honda.
Yeah.
I've never lusted after a bike as much as I had watching that thing. So it was, I was like, brilliant. So we got on it. We went to Valencia, which is not a track I like anyway. No. It's just a Mickey Mouse, doesn't suit me. And then we went to Albacete, and I had this really, like, the tyre was fucked, right? And I was learning, I was staying out on it over long because I was just trying to learn a little bit, and I was coming back in on that lap. There was one corner I could just lay it sideways really well at, and to be honest, the tyre was so far gone that even with electronics, it just bit me, and my hand it was a really vicious high side, and it got trapped, and it snapped these two, so they were facing out of there, ripped the glove, right? Smashed both the knuckles, both the fingers, and they're coming out like that, right? And it like smashed my hand. I'd signed a 2-year deal. Everything was done, it's also 2-year deal. So I went to see the specialist, and again, I was, naive, or I always knew I had a long life, right? And I'm actually in good nick, right? But the specialist said, look, you've damaged him really badly. If you go, the first race was in 3 weeks, and he's like, but the next one was in 5 weeks, like a couple of weeks afterwards.
Yep.
He said, if you come back with 3 weeks, there's a good chance that might never properly heal. But he said, because what we've got to do to it, how it's going to work, you can't be working it like you need on a motorbike. They can't. And he said, but in 5 weeks' time, you're probably going to be good to go. So I've done a 2-year deal, so what I should have done, which is what everyone does now, and I'm just an idiot, was said, I'm fine, done 1 lap of practice, and gone, actually, I can't ride, right? So that's what I should have done. Instead, I said, look, I can't ride the first round. I just felt I should be honest and tell them whatever. So they brought in Lavia. Lavia finished second and third, was leading the championship, and I'd done a 2-year deal, and they said, no, that's that. And after all these years, I was like, you're joking? And he's like, no, fine, but no, it's over. You're out. And I was like, so then, also I then had to take him to court, which I won.
Yeah.
To get me, that they had to actually honour my contract. But it was a big pain in the arse. So then I was back to being like an ambulance chaser. So then finally I filled in for, what's that? Because it's getting a long while ago now, don't you? 2005. So I think I did 1 or 2, maybe for. Oh no, it was the year after.
For MSS, did you?
Yeah, I did a couple for MSS, got a couple of top 10s, had one very weird crash at Gerrard's, which, there's nothing like it when you have a weird crash, you don't know why it was. I think we had because they did find there was one dodgy tyre warmer, and I think I might have just had a
cold spot,
exactly that, a cold bit on the tyre. But it was weird. But I did a couple of them. Loved Nick, great team, but that didn't really work out. Then Scott Smart got sacked from Suzuki.
Yes.
And they said, look, I was pulled down in, come in, ride. I got some fastest laps, pole position at Brands, podiums, and had a pretty good season on it, sort of coming in at that point. Didn't win any, but like I say, got on the podium and set up pole on the final round. So I got offered that again for the following season. So I jumped on that. Paul left to go World Superbikes. A chap called Robert Wicks came in, who'd never run a motorcycle team before. We didn't do any testing at all. Stuart Johnson wanted to redesign and do a central fuel tank and everything, because that was like what they were doing in Grand Prix. We started off on the traditional bikes, and the first race of the year at Alton Park, there was Haslam, Shaky, someone else I can't remember, and me, and all four of us finished within 0.18 of a second. Right, it was a battle to the line, right? And it was like, wicked, this is going to be a great year.
Was Shaky your teammate? Like?
Shaky was my teammate. Yeah. The second round was in Ireland, and I got there, and we had a test at Alton afterwards, and they tested me on the bike that I'd just run and this new bike, and I was like 1.7 seconds off on the new bike. And they're like, look, it's just going to take time to get it adjusted. And I was like, that's fine. But I said, I'm running my new bike until I can get it, at the same time. Got to Ireland. They've not bought my bike. I've got two of the new ones. Shaky's got two of the old ones.
The original ones.
Right? And I'm like, went mad. And they're like, well, so I want one of the Shakies. No, I'm one of the Shakies. I was like, what? So I struggled with that bike. And I'm trying to think whether we what happened in the end on that season. I'm struggling to remember whether I completed the season or not, or whether we kind of parted. I
seem to think you completed the season.
Yeah, I think we completed no, I don't think we did actually. I think we, do you know what?
That's the year of the snack crash with Dean Thomas.
That's right.
I don't rely on my notes too often, but when I do, they're there.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that at least someone knows what I was doing. God, I'm getting senile.
But you recite the early stuff so well.
Yeah.
And the later stuff's like, hang on a minute.
Exactly, it's not as clear. So that was exactly. So I had some high and low points that season. That was one of them. That was definitely a low point. There was a whole load of us racing at Snet. I'd loved Dean Thomas, and I got a massive tank slapper sort of coming on, and it obviously knocked the pads back.
Yeah.
But I was in the lead of maybe I think we were battling for fourth, but maybe it was 5 riders behind me. And anyway, I had time and thank goodness for all data logging then, because I had time for 3 snaps, 1, 2, 3. It still didn't come back. I was off the track. Now, if I'd seen the rider in front do that and I was going left and right, I would have kind of looked up.
You've got one eye on them, haven't you? Because coming off the back straight, isn't it?
Maybe they're going to come back on. Mm-hmm. He had a very funny head down style, right? I debated for a second. I'm on the back brake. I've still got no front brake whatever. I'm like going down the gearbox. I've got the back brake on. I debated just throwing it down.
Yeah.
But I knew me and the bike would then be coming over the track amongst the pack. And I kept thinking he's going to see me. He's
look
going
up
to
at
know.
some point.
He's going to know, right? And as soon as I got on the track, I tried to flick right. I actually don't remember anything after that. The first thing I know, I woke up in an ambulance. I was in hospital in Norfolk for a couple of weeks. So was he. Obviously, he didn't. So it was a horrible thing. It was a horrible, horrible thing. I actually had to go up in front of an RAC tribunal for it, but they showed my data logging, and you could see my front lever, and it showed it, whatever it was, 191 miles an hour. I'd pulled it 3 times. Absolutely, more movement than there was. So I was completely let off. No points of nothing. But it was a really awful incident. I had a couple of people who had a massive go at me. Oh, you should have. But you're travelling on a rocket ship.
Hang on a minute.
Exactly, and it's not like you'd ever want to do anything. And at the same time, even to this day, it's kind of, I just didn't expect. Also, there was nothing I could do on mine.
No.
Do you know what I mean? I was doing everything.
You were literally the passenger,
right?
Yeah.
And I just thought, so anyway, and I felt dreadful for Dean, because it was, and I could just hear him. I didn't know what was going on. I was badly bashed up, and I could hear him sort of screaming on the stretcher next to me, and so that was pretty. It was weeks of morphine and crap, and that was a really hard time, and so that was a difficult point, and I think I ended it. So that season, so it might have been that season that I ended with on a high with a podium and a fast lap. It was one of those two, but that was 2006. Takes me to 2007.
Back to the old faithful.
Yeah, back to the old faithful. Yeah, Yamaha. So I'm thinking, great, this will be good. Then Rob Mack decides he's going to switch to Pirellis. Right. Well, Pirelli's now fine. Right. And again, I couldn't believe it. I've had a few times I've had this shit haunt me, but Pirelli's in the first race of the year was at Brands. I broke 2 screens by going through them. Right, as in high sided.
Yeah.
Right, because they had it felt like they had no sidewall. They would just suddenly squish and go. I was teammates with Tommy Hill. He'd come off a 600, never ridden a superbike. Obviously we know the talent he is, but I knew what a tyre should feel like. I knew how they normally reacted. No one had ever, Pirellis were a brand new thing, right? They weren't even in World Superbikes.
No, that was the days of, it was Dunlop and Michelin, wasn't it?
And Michelin,
either of those two.
So they wanted to do it, and Rob realised he could save 40 grand a ride or whatever to go to these Pirellis. So, and I could not. I had said I need to go test it. I cannot understand these tyres. They just feel like they got a puncture.
Yeah.
They feel fine. And suddenly this collapse, and the front wasn't too bad. I could kind of live with the front, but I was struggling like mad on it. Rob said we haven't got money for testing. I was like, so then I was trying to say, well, what about if I, buy the tyres? What about if we do a deal on my salary and I can run on Dunlop? So I said I can't run these. And Rob was like, no, we're doing Pirelli. It's a deal. It's a team deal. So I just, I did it a couple more races, and I just knew if that was where it was going to continue and we weren't going to test, I didn't want to do it. So we just, we're brilliant friends. So we just said, look, let's go our separate ways. James, make up a story. You've hurt yourself mountain biking. So that's what we did. But then TC, I think, was MCN, sniffed that one out straight away. What have you done? Give me some x-rays. Give me so. So I was kind of, so there I was suddenly again, and I was going, this shouldn't be so bloody difficult. This should be fun, right? Yeah. By this time I got kids, and my little one nearly died of meningitis, and she was critical in hospital for just at that stage for sort of 4 or 5 weeks. She was premature and only weighed just over 3 and a bit pounds anyway. And then when she got meningitis, and then they thought she might be deaf or brain damaged, and actually motorcycling didn't seem as important, and I'd had enough of it, and I'm thinking, God, I can still do so much, but it just every time I feel like I've just got myself out of the treacle, I'm back in it. And then Hawk phoned up, said, look, you want to come ride us? Scott Smart was the other rider. I just started finishing top Kawasaki, beating everyone, and and actually wasn't throwing it down the road, just was getting back on it. And the bike was all right. You could get between 5th and 8th on it, right? But that's where you were. It was a big old bulbous thing.
That was your win, wasn't it? If you finished top 5.
Yeah, and which, I generally did. And, 80% of the time I was top cracker as well. So, to come in and beat Scott Cadwell both times, they were like, oh, okay. And so he finished the season. They were changing the bike the next year, and they said, look, great. They offered me a good contract, good bonuses. And like I said, so I bought, my motorhome, double deal my leathers, all my personal sponsors, my cap made up, credit crunch hit. And they phone up and say, do you want to ride for free? And I was like, no. And so Eurosport then said, you want to come and do some stuff for us? And I probably ended up, making more money for Eurosport that year than most riders did racing bikes, which seemed crazy. And then obviously I was doing a bit for James Cracknell, who was doing ITV. And then when he stopped, ITV said, will you do that? So I did all Eurosport on every other bit, apart from Superbikes, which I did ITV. So it was like a double bubble. So it was great. And it kept me involved in the sport. But like I say, the one weird thing about that is I never had a goodbye, do big burnouts, do wheelies, see you everyone. That's it. The Americans would say you got no closure. Do you know what I mean?
exactly
It's
that.
like, do you know what I mean? So it was, which also made it slightly difficult. And I nearly came back a few times, and sometimes I think maybe I should have, sometimes, but actually I didn't, and and I'm happy, and it's kind of, that's that. So that is basically a long version, because I can't do short, of where my life's gone, sort of, to do with racing. But I think what's really important to add at this point as well was I had a brilliant time.
Yeah.
So I might have had my ups and downs, but I loved it. Travelled the world. I've loved travelling. Met loads of great people. My wife and I, we shared a lot. There was a lot of fun in the early days. It was kind of like, I've had some brilliant teammates. I've seen the most amazing things. And I spun coming out of corners next to doing a Schwantz, and I've beaten Bayliss, and I've your Hodgsons and all the world champions, and I've raced 250s, 500s, Grand Prix bikes, MotoGP. I came back and scored points, 13th in MotoGP when they asked me. Kenny Roberts asked me back on his top privateer. In 2004, so forgotten about that one, but
Proton,
on the Proton, so kind of, spanned these eras. Also had a great laugh doing it. So I kind of don't ever, I've got some people like, well, what, why did you win? Did you win this British Championship or this World Championship? No, none of those. But also I was lucky enough to always have a bit of a business head to. I think I was, successfully, continuously one of the best earners in my niche.
Yeah.
I was kind of, which is helping me now.
Sure.
And I kind of, and I absolutely loved it. And yes, would there be a couple of boxes you might tick differently? Yeah, but as I say, who knows where that might have led, right? So, on the other hand, I think, well, you are where you are, where the universe wants you to be.
I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And I also am a big believer of not doing one more race.
Yeah.
Or one more lap, or whether it's flat tracking at Boasties, whatever. I'm a big, because you have no idea.
Yeah.
And also how many riders over the years have been injured, they've put their season on the skids because they did one more moto, or they did one more lap, or let's go and do one more jump, let's do one more downhill run.
Very much.
Fuck, if I hadn't done that, I could have been a contender.
Yeah. So it's kind of, so I never, I'm not, I think I've been exceptionally blessed. I did what I wanted to do from when I was 8 years old, to when I was 34. And like I say, met all these brilliant people and done all these great things. Obviously I don't race anymore. Apart from I do Goodwood, which I absolutely love. That's the only race I do anymore. And it's, we won that, and the kind of, so it's kind of, but it's, I've got a nice sort of, I think I've got a nice balance. I love working alongside Whit and Matt, Shaky, Rach, the gang that we've got. We've got such a nice team, and all the people behind as well that you guys don't get to see, whether it be the directors or the runners, or there's just a really cool crew, and it's a really enjoyable thing to do, and I love still being able to go there and be part of the sport, and it actually, it's amazing, how much kind of, you just think of yourself as a kind of forgotten old man sort of now, but actually how many, people still come up, or the kudos you get from the riders who, so it's kind of, it's just a really nice thing, and it balances well, and just doing the, whether it be the 12 rounds of British Championship or a couple more World Superbikes, it's a nice balance for me with my family, with my other sort of commitments that I like doing, and so, to be honest, I feel very lucky, and I'm a happy man.
I love chatting with you and with Whit, because you're both of a similar temperament in that sense. Because Whit's got Huddersfield International Airport, he's got a few properties that he looks after. I was chatting to him on the way across this morning, so I'm going to see him on Friday, and it's just life, isn't it?
Yeah, he's one of my favourite people in the world.
For both of you. It's for the careers that you've had. to come out of the end of it. Whit, again, similar thing, didn't get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
His career was ended with the eye injury and the roll on from other injuries as well, and didn't get that chance to say thank you, but giving back to us, the fans. And I've worked in the sport and done, but still the big motorcycle racing fan. I wouldn't do this if I wasn't. But to give a little bit back and look at the next generation coming through and the help that you got from Ron in the early days.
Yeah.
I remember we were out, we'd been to the farm, we were there pretty much this time last year, actually, when we did a chat with Leon. And Leon was saying, oh, James Haydon, he slept on a camp bed down there. And it's just to have that grounding. And you can't say, well, what if or anything like that, because it just doesn't work that way in motorcycle racing because you've no idea. No. But to have that grounding with Ron and to be up in Derbyshire, it's like something out of Enid Blyton book, isn't it?
Yeah, very much.
Straight up to that, up into the countryside, in the river, in the canal.
Playing, and they had the big stables. There was lots of stable girls as well, and like all that sort of fun, and like hacking around on motocross bikes and quads, and just like I say, walking around shooting bits and bobs. And Ron is such an amazing amazing people anyway. They got a real sense of fun and mischief to them. Leon, when I first went there, was a little 8-year-old kid
who still has fun and mischief.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the core.
Love Leon, love Leon, and they're a great family. And also, I'm very lucky with my own family. My mum and dad, who did so much for me. I've got 3 great sisters, and now it's sort of my turn to be doing the next thing with my family. So it's kind of you've got to enjoy it. And as I say, I don't look back and go, oh, I could have done this. I look at all the people I beat that went on to be world champions. And I was consistently always competitive with, throughout my career. So did I have the speed to do it? Yes. The consistency, possibly not. The hunger, yeah. The luck, probably not. And actually kind of, you need a bit of luck sometimes. But actually, as I said, on the flip side, whether it be an injury, I'm one of the lucky enough to be a rider who's retired and, I'm in good shape. I'm healthy. Everything works, and it's sort of, it's kind of, so there's also kind of a lot to be said about that, and and I'm still loving. I've got 40 motorbikes in the garage. It's got, we did off-road tours in Vietnam on them, and we go, off to India next year to do a tour around. And I love motorbikes, and they're always going to be. Cut me in half, you'll see a motorbike. It's kind of it's one of those, and so you're always blessed to have done a job that you love. And I'm still doing stuff I love. So it's cool.
How important, and I've asked this of Foggy from his situation, how important was it, now you look back, to have Joe with you as that backbone through your career?
Yeah, because it's, it's got our 20th wedding anniversary last week, and we've actually been together 32 years. So, it was great because there's a flip side to all those sort of things. Obviously you can be out having fun with, sort of various types, but actually, I knew she was a very special girl when I first met her. There was, as you say, kind of there's a grounding there because you're not having to go out and impress or go out and try and have late nights or whatever because you're kind of, you're happy. I still fancy her. I'm still very much in love with her, and it's kind of, she's been great. She's been great throughout my career. And what I love most about it was that, to be honest, she can care less about motorbikes, right? So she doesn't, people go, oh, James is, riding, this or that. And she, oh, is he? She wouldn't. No, I can remember once we were in Australia. I think we were in Indonesia, and it was boiling hot. And all that job was, she got to bring out my umbrella, my drink, and my cat, right? And anyway, it's absolutely swelling. I'm like, where the hell is she, right? And it's like World Championship, and in the end, my mechanics run, got another umbrella. Sorry, James, he's like managed to get me like a glass of water. And like literally 30 seconds that comes up before the blare of the whistle. She comes running on, and she'd completely forgotten she'd been like drinking champagne with like with Whittam's missus and Michaela Fogarty and and she was like, I'm like, one job, babe, one job, right? And but that sort of summed up. Whereas I know I got friends in it whose girlfriends would be timing them in sectors and saying, "Oh, you should do the."
You don't need that.
That wasn't our relationship, and I kind of liked it. So bikes wasn't anything to her, and obviously when I met her, you had nothing, either. So you kind of, so it's kind of, that worked really well for me. And some people find, why isn't that a bit insulting that she doesn't really know anything about bikes? And I was like, well, no, it's not really her interest or passion.
She's there for you.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's kind of
with you.
Yeah, and so that didn't matter, but it kind of, it also, I think, made it much healthier, for me, and and it was just a real. It's always a grounder, but it's also like, you went through that chicane wrong. I mean, she'd never say that in a million years because she wouldn't know. I mean, she'd be lucky she'd seen me go through chicane, right? So,
really the bottom of champagne for
exactly, right? So it's kind of, so that kind of, that's always worked very well for us. How that relationship sort of worked. Like any long relationship, you always have your ups and downs and bits and bobs, but. Again, I feel very blessed to have, to have met someone like that. I don't think that you meet many people like that in your lives, and so it's again, there's swings and roundabouts, isn't it? The negatives on the racing side of some of these things, but real positive on this, that sort of wonderful side.
When you look back, what gives you the most satisfaction?
I think that, I've been able to, race in 500 Grand Prix, like I say, against your, whether you be your Cadloys, your Dewars, your Schwanzes, your Rainies, I've also raced against your Rosses, your Pedrosas, your whatever, raced against your Foggies, your Edwards, your Baylisses, your Keeleys, so I've spanned a lot of eras. And I spent a lot of, from two strokes, 500 two strokes to superbikes. I also think that, I was quite good at monetizing it. I think
that's vital, isn't it?
Right.
But not every rider can do that.
No.
Or has the support to do it. So
I think, that's also, and I also think that, I was doing it wrong because I was very dedicated, very professional, but I also really enjoyed it. And it was kind of, there were still the times even back then, whereas on a Sunday night, quite often you'd all go together, go and have a few beers, go into the local town, whatever country that might be in, and it wouldn't matter whether it was you or Kevin Swanson, you are in a karaoke booth drinking sake, and, it just, you kind of, it was it seemed in some ways like you had a bit more fun. It was never not as serious, and everyone took their fitness, to the 10th degree. And there was a lot of seasons where I didn't drink at all. I just didn't. I just wanted just to be focused because I was too paranoid at some levels. I didn't want to have anything in the back of my head to say, "Oh, you couldn't do this." But that slipped away since I'm retired. I love a beer now.
Because you can.
Yeah, because I can. But it's sort of, I think, I don't know, I think being, just being in it, I never raced production, apart from the first years, once I was 18, I raced Grand Prix bikes or Superbikes. That's it as well. Like a lot of people racing this or that, I raced with good teams, so you had good personnel, good trucks, good tyres, good engineers, good people, good computer men, good electronics men. So it was kind of, to feel, that I was able to do that. I also feel, I've also always had really good, I was a rider that gave 100%. So that, crowd-wise, I was always quite appreciated, and I never, I think in all the years I've had one guy come up and go, I don't like your commentary, you say this word wrong or whatever, but actually I
wonder which word that is.
Yeah, you know exactly which word it is, don't you? Kawasaki.
That's the one, Kawasaki.
Which I now say actually because
I noticed you changed it.
Yeah, I just couldn't be a.
But why change it? You shouldn't have to.
To be honest, it was the only thing I'd ever get nagged about. But what I meant more about, as in the riding, it just sort of, it was just always nice. I always felt very loved by the supporters and by the fans. And, they liked the way I gave 100%. And, sometimes I might stick it down the road, but, also sometimes it got me a win when I shouldn't have had one.
Fine line, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a fine line, and actually that was just my line. And maybe it was a clever way of doing it, but that was the way I did it, and that's the way I think most of my favourite riders do it.
So your Swansons, your Dewans, the old campaigners.
And even you go your Marquez, you kind of like like the guys that really laid it on the line. I greatly admired that, and I loved those kind of all out, give it 100% no matter what, even if the bike's not working, tie it in knots. That was kind of, that was what gave it, and it was, it's also such a thrilling thing to have done, to have done what you wanted, and having always been a great traveller, I love travelling. Me and Joe used to backpack around the world, and like the end of the season, the kids have been everywhere, sort of taking them out of school, bum around Australia, and we've done this and that, and it's kind of, we're, obviously Jo was a stewardess for 25 years, right? So, she, so also half the time she'd go, right, James, I'm off to Brazil. Actually, you're in the off season, you get in club, you want first, you want to come for 5 days? Yep. So we'd sort of like, go and, so the amount of, so we've always really enjoyed that. So it's kind of, it was, it's been a fun life, and touch some wood, continues to be so.
Did you ever consider going into the team management side or running a team, or did the TV take you and just embracing that role?
Yeah, I thought that's exactly what I would do. Run a team.
Because of your experience across all the classes, the grounding from Ron, working with Colin.
Yeah, and I just thought that's what I would go on to do, and I was also quite good at raising sort of money and stuff like that.
And good with the sponsors.
And I thought, but just when the TV thing sort of happened, that kind of sucked up. And for those first few years, because I was a bit lost, I didn't say no to any work. So I was doing like 24, 25 weekends, all through. I had 2 little kids, and I was like, yep, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll open that shop. Yeah, I'll do it. I just felt like I couldn't say no to anything. I was doing track days for another company. I was doing, because
that's natural.
I just sort of just felt that's what I needed to do. And then, I kind of sort of could sort of back off a little bit from that when I sort of realised a little bit more what happened. And then by then I was kind of tied in the championships that I would, you wanted to start in British Championship.
Of course.
And then sort of subtly in the background, this little property business, which sort of started off, became sort of, bigger and bigger. And then before I knew it, I realised I had something that, and I felt bad actually, because some riders, have approached me sometimes, and I try and help a bit, but, I've managed riders in the past. I managed Billy McConnell for a while, but to do that job properly, you can only do it for them properly. Otherwise, you can't do it. And he'd be back in Australia, and be running around and going to the NEC and getting this helmet deal, and then going down to Bournemouth, and in the end, he's like, well, what? That's James, you're brilliant. Let me give you. We've done this deal, but I was like, with what I had going on, I was, I couldn't even take any money off him. I was like, look, I can't. You need it. He's like, no, you can't. We've done it. I was like, no, it's just look. I love you, Billy. So I kind of, and I realised that I couldn't spread myself thin enough to be the dad for my kids, the husband for my wife, the businessman for my business, and the TV thing. Whilst that's as much.
That's enough for anyone
as I could do.
Yeah.
And I realised, so I just and I said, I'm really sorry, but it's no when these guys approach me. But I'll always put in a phone call or Mr. A meet Mr. B and just a little bit, but actually trying to get involved. I lightly helped Jack Scott for a while just because they're kind of in the area and I like him and I think he's got some talent. But they wanted me to get a bit more, but I just knew I couldn't do it justice. I wasn't going to say yes to something that I couldn't do properly. So I kind of, so that whole running a team thing, just kind of, it went from something that I thought I was going to do. I thought, as I came to the end of racing, that's what I'll do. Didn't, and then I went off on a different path.
When you're doing the TV, there's yourself and Shaky or Whit, depending on who's on at the time, along with Matt, and you work with TC as well through the time. One thing you're not shy of, all of you, are putting your opinions across in an eloquent manner, both yourself and Whit, and sometimes you don't agree. A lot of the time you don't agree.
Yeah.
But I think, would it be fair to say that this season has been the most, 23 was the most polarising season in a long time in terms of opinion on what went on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of, it's funny because when you first come, you're a bit afraid to give your opinion, So, and I was the same when I first started because all
I
these
still
guys
don't do it on here.
all you guys are friends and whatever. And then as you get a bit more, and I used to take the piss out of Whit because I go, Whit, he'd say something, and then off camera he'd go, I completely believe you, James. And I was like, you rascal, right? And they'll always ask me the difficult one because they know they're getting it shot straight down the line because I don't, fudge coat it. But also, I'm never malicious. I couldn't care if I hate your guts. I'm going to praise you when you need praise, and I'm going to say, and I don't really hate anyone, but it's kind of, but that's my job, and actually, I stick by my opinion. I believe in my opinion, and it's kind of, if I see something which I don't like, I'm not going to pretend that it's all fine. And actually, I think as a good pundit, you need to do that, and also it's never a bad thing to have different points of view sometimes because it's interesting anyway, isn't it? It kind of creates a bit more. I think people enjoy it, and it's not. I'd never do it in a kind of Simon Cowish, no. Sort of. Do you know what I mean? Like sure. That sort of way.
Well, that's what I say about yourself and Whit. It's eloquently put across. You can see you both like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of, and I know how hard that job is. So I hate to be negative sometimes, but also equally, sometimes I don't know. I mean, a good example would be that you take it back a bit. That final round when Halloran got taken out by Halloran, then Hickman,
Alton Park,
Alton Park, and both of whom are brilliant, safe, great riders, but they were both absurd moves. Right, and you can sugarcoat it any other way, right? But there was, and it kind of, and it needs to be said. And also, poor old Jason, who kind of, it's in any other type of world, he probably should have been a double champ, right? At the same time, it is what it is. The rules are the rules. I mean, I'd have loved these rules. I mean, these would have allowed me to have been a champion for sure. But it's kind of, it's part of it. But that's the lovely thing about our team as well, though, because they're all great guys and girls, and we have a real laugh, and on and off the camera, we can take the piss out of each other, we can rib each other, we can disagree, we've been sometimes in hysterics where we're holding our noses because we try not to wet ourselves over something, and that's a great thing to be part of, to be part of a team still that you enjoy. And I think also we not trying to pat anyone on the head too much, but I think, we make a nice show around British Superbikes. It's a brilliant product that they give us, and I think that Eurosport, and I think they do a good job of covering it well. And I don't talk about me, but I mean the people they've got.
The people, you got the Cov and the rest of the team that put it all together.
And, in your Wits and your Mats and your Shakies, I think they're and their Rachels and whatever. I think they're really good, and I think we're I feel really lucky, to be in that team, because I have been in teams in the past that haven't been like that, and they're all a bit bitchy and all a bit cliquey, and everyone goes their separate ways, where we still tend to go all out for dinner at once. We'll all have a couple of beers, nothing heavy, but it's kind of, nice man and good chat, and
Say that bit again.
Huh?
Nothing heavy.
Yeah, nothing heavy, of course not.
Of course not, because we're all professional.
We are all very, very professional.
We've never been in that situation.
Never, ever. No, not at all. Not us.
Jennifer sends a love. She also just from our Patreon scheme that we have, which the link is in the description below. We always put the questions out, the guests out to tender, and Jennifer's come back with a question. She'd love to know, if you were a BSB team manager, who would your two riders be, and what manufacturer would you be on?
Oh, nice.
Let's throw that
who would my
straight
two
underneath.
riders be? I mean, right now, because we've got about think about who's in the championship right now. I've been a big O'Halloran fan.
Yeah.
I must admit, because I think he's been consistent. I think he's been fast. I think he's, he had a quite difficult year this year. He doesn't throw it down the road too much. So I think, he's a great banker to have in your team, and I think that he's consistently been, up until very recently, I'd have always had a Josh Brooks, right?
Yeah.
But actually, I just, I don't know. It's I don't know. I kind of so for me, obviously Bridewell, current champion, rode bloody well to get there, but do you have Glenn's grab it by the scruff of the neck? I think I think that was a very good lineup, Glenn and Bridewell. I must admit, because you had the sort of
bless him, he took a risk on those two, didn't he?
He did,
to oppose the characters.
Yeah, and you wondered. You knew that was going to go to fireworks at some point.
100%. They kept a lid on it. I was amazed they kept a lid on it for as long as they did.
Yeah, so it's kind of, but I think, I think I'd probably go right now. I think I'd probably go with Bridewell and Vickers.
Interesting. I thought he was one of the most improved riders last season. I think for a couple of laps as a concentration, Cadwell, maybe one more through the season, I think he is a championship contender for 24.
Yeah, I do.
Undoubtedly. And Kyle will be up there. He learned a lot last year.
Yeah.
But Danny Kent as well.
Yeah.
With the might of raceways and the data they've got. And Spanner.
I'm really
your old mechanic.
I'd really like Danny Kent. Obviously a world champion. I know he's had his bits, but he's worked really hard, and I really hope he has a great season, because I'm a big fan of his. But I think Bridewell's, he's got that championship now. I think he's a tricky man to manage, but I think I can manage him. Do you know what I mean?
Throw your hat in the ring there.
So, well, no, I mean, I'm not going to get involved, right? It's all very well, isn't it?
You just said you haven't got time, and then, I can actually manage it.
No. But
if you were on that,
you're
hypothetically speaking,
if I was a team manager, because actually, he's his own person, and he's outspoken, and, he's got his own demeanor and ego, and it's like, but that's fine. That's who he is.
That's
right?
Tommy,
and that's Tommy. In the same way, like Foggy was no shrinking violet, and who he is when these guys get good. So, but I think that all those years he's put in to get this, I think that he will always be a championship contender now, whilst he's still fit and healthy, right? And Vickers, I think, is an up-and-comer. I think that he was very impressive towards the tail end of last year, and I think that, I quite like the balance of the two. I quite like that's how it always was a bit when we were, a slightly older one, a slightly younger one, where you learn and correspond. So I think that would probably be my team. Bike-wise, it would have to be the Ducatis or Yamahas. I think the Ducatis are, we know how good they are. I've got a soft spot for both manufacturers. I really have. I've got a very deep affinity with Yamaha, who've been brilliant over the years, and I love their bikes. And Ducatis, I mean, if you don't love a Ducati, then you got no pulse. So, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm good with that. Good with that. Jennifer will be over the moon. One question that I quite like to ask, because this one, some riders don't listen to the question and go off on a different answer, but I know you'll be all right with this. What's the best advice you were given but didn't take?
Don't pass John Reynolds.
Yeah, I did wonder if that might make an appearance.
But the best advice, I mean, the thing is, I think I was always actually, with the exception of that, I think I was always pretty good because, listen, loads of people give you advice.
Yeah.
And as you get older, the great thing is you should always listen to advice, but you can filter out what you want or don't want out of that, right? So, because there's little snippets of gold everywhere.
Yeah.
So, don't take everything on the chin, but I think that, always take the time to listen to a piece of advice, and certainly, someone older or more experienced, that's, it can often count for much, much more. So, best piece of advice is, I think that I tended, to, I think I was pretty good at tending to take good advice. As I said, and I was advised not to pass John, and my dad and whatever, and it kind of the heat of the battle and the hate in the moment. I went against that advice, and that bit me in the arse. So I think that's I mean, that's a clear standout for me, because I think most advice I listened to, I thought, yeah, I can see why that works or that does, and that's the great thing about it. You listen to it, take what you want.
Being in the moment to accept it as well and understand where you are and what's going on.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Tell me one thing about yourself that nobody else knows.
One thing about myself that nobody else knows. Absolutely love playing the guitar.
Just over there in the corner.
Yeah, I'm not going to play for you though. No, you're not. It's not happening.
It can stay in the
sounds
corner.
Good. I just said I absolutely love doing it.
You've got we haven't done these random questions this side of Christmas. It's nice to get them back. You've got a dinner party.
Yeah.
You got 4 guests.
Yeah.
Alive or dead. Who are they?
Well, you got
3 guests, so it makes it a 4-person table. That makes it easier.
3 guests. 3 guests. I think I'd have John Lennon. Do you have Jimi Hendrix along? I mean, he's going to he's going to certainly create a party.
He's going to lighten the night up.
He's going to lighten the night up. Probably him. Mike Helwood.
That's a good dinner party.
Yeah.
That's a really good dinner party. What annoys you the most in life?
What annoys me the most in life? I think kind of, we were of a generation of, we just wanted to break rules, whereas there's a new generation that just want to make rules. And I kind of think some of these menial rules, these sort of minor, like life is about freedom and about living. And I understand, like, you can't go murdering someone, something like that. But I mean, some of these petty bureaucrat, even like running on the green line or the red line in MotoGP, some of these rules that just creeping in just to the flow of life, I just strangle a little bit of the sunlight out of the day for me. Those sort of things, and they just start to sneak in more and more, and it seems to be almost like a bit of death of common sense. And so that is that sort of thing that annoys the shit out of me.
How eloquently put. You thrown me completely, because that was perfectly put. I could not agree more. Could not agree more.
Oh, good.
What was the last thing you did for the first time?
The last thing I did for the first time. God, that's a good one. It's weird, but it was vibrating concrete, right? So it was just, they were putting in that staircase you saw, and they had this like vibrator gun that sort of went in, but it just looked, because they're trying to get it in, they needed to go down to settle, so everything, all the bolts were all in. I was just like, I've got to have a go on that, right? So that was like, not yesterday, the day before. So just because it just looked like something I wanted to do. So I just helped vibrate this sort of concrete in with this long, it sounds wrong, long vibrator on this on this drill, but it's all building terms and it's a building device.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, I think that's probably it.
What's been your most embarrassing moment in your career?
Oh God, without doubt, it's an absolute clear hit in front. 500 Grand Prix, Barcelona. I was in ninth, and my bike started to run out of fuel. I got Cadaloro in front, and I can't remember who I got behind me, but it starts surging, and I'm like 2 laps to go, and I've got like +4, like +3, and it's coming down, and I get it across the line. There's like, we're at Catalonia, there's 150,000 people, it's packed. I am like absolutely over the moon, and I'm just like, yeah. So obviously now it's like, and I'm good at wheelies, right? I like most riders,
100%.
Right? And I was like, wow, brilliant, waving, and obviously now it's on like a, like a shut sort of throttle, it's cruising back okay, right? So there's these 2 massive grandstands, right? So I come out and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do a really great big wheelie, right? So I put up, and then it's been like, whoa, because it's died. So like, just gave it like a couple more millimeters.
Yeah.
It had a funny little shaped bit on the bottom of the tank, and there must have just been enough. So it was and I just gave this little bit, and it just went, ying, right? And like basically, it just put it on full, and the bike flipped, like flipped up into the air. Right? I fell back, broke my collarbone. Right, the bike barreled right over into magnesium cases, burst into light, burst into flames. There's like maybe 40,000 people going crazy. It's the best thing ever. There's a firework burning display, stuntman in front of them, right? They are just going crazy. I've had my best result ever in 500 Grand Prix. I know I've done my collarbone. I've like crawled to the side of the track. I'm winded, like the bike's just burning. I'm trying to I can't even move. I'm still in it. I literally climbed over the barrier and just lay at the bottom of the tire wall, right up against it. And I can just hear them till eventually this bloke comes along, like, and there's minutes and they're just going crazy. And he comes on and picks me up, and away I go. And I have to come back, and Steve Harris is like, where's the bike? What have you done? They literally shoveled it off the back of a truck. And final race of the year, he's like, do you hate me, James? I was like, I am so sorry. But, it was like, that was the most embarrassing thing.
Who was telling me that story?
Ever done. It was just horrific.
Who was in the garage next door? Was Mark Woodage?
Could have been, yeah.
Somebody's told me that story this week.
Yeah.
They've told me that story this week.
That was like easy, the worst. It still makes me cringe to this day.
Okay, a couple more left, because you've been fantastic. Thank you, mate. This has been absolutely brilliant. Who's the most famous person in your phone?
Most famous person in my phone? Don't know really. I've got that many, really. I mean, I've got obviously a few in bikes. James Martin, the chef.
That's good enough.
Yeah, it was. He's a good bloke from Goodwood. He's a great laugh. I got pretty much a who's who of motorcycle racers.
James Martin will do. Happy with that. Absolutely fine with that. And the final question that I ask every first-time guest: what's your best hire car story, James?
My best hire car story is basically we were in Cartagena, Red Bull. Roger Marshall said to me, right, James, whatever happens, do not damage the hire cars, right? Because Ben goes mad, right? So we're like, fine. We're coming out. I got my mechanics in my car. Reynolds has got his in his car. And, you know, when you come out, the road goes around to the left. There used to be a little dirt track.
Yes,
that you could go through the bottom, right? So I'm going to go to beat him, obviously, right? So I go down there, and then as he sees me, he accelerates. So we're both heading towards the same point. At the last moment, I realise, you know, if I don't move over a bit, you know, there's going to be an accident. You know, like the Spanish just kind of smudged the tarmac to the edge, right? It turns out there's like a lip on it like that. So we go, poof, poof, come flying next to him. And we come down, I punch both the wheels on the side of the car, right? So I'm like, bollocks. So we start, obviously we've only got one spare, put it on the front. And so we got everyone on one side of the car. We have to drive, whatever, 20 k's back to the thing. By the time we get back, the tyre's shredded. It's sparking like mad. It was a little Seat Ibiza, right? And anyway, I was like, I look along the road, all parked outside the hotel. There must be 6 of them I could see from there, right? So I was like, you know what? When it gets dark, I'll just come out, swap it with someone else's, right? They'll all have a spare. So anyway, it gets dark. Out I come. I'm like swapping it over, and I get, "Oi, James!" Right? And it's one of the guys from Dunlop Tyres. He's like, "That's my car," and I was like, and there was another one right in front. I went, "That one?" And he's like, "Don't know." Right? So anyway, I did his one back up anyway. So I'm doing this next one, right? Swapping it over, right? Got my tyre. I can hear like sirens, and they're getting closer and closer, and I'm sounding like they're fucking getting really near. And I'm finished that, run back, lob the wheel in, like close the boot, and they sound like they're super close. Get into the hotel, I can hear all screeching, and like all these vans coming up, right? And I'm like I just want to run. I walk past steps. Hi there, get in the lift, go upstairs, put the shower, look out the window. They've closed the road, and ETA, who were like doing a bombing campaign in that area at the moment, someone's phoned in. There's this guy playing around under cars, and they thought it was a bombing thing, right? So they got sniffer dogs, mirrors, and they're looking all underneath it, right? And they got all the dogs out, and I was like, clothes off in the shower, like, do. Then the next morning, right, we get to the circuit, and Ian Newton's like, "You," right? And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "You've nicked my wheel." Right? And I went, I said, "Ian, I didn't know it was yours." I said, basically, explain the story. He's like, "What do you owe me for a tyre?" I was like, "Ian, it's a hire car, right? Just like, take it back. Don't worry about it. They won't check it. They will check it." Then he chased me for fucking months. He came on the grid on the front row. I was on the front row of British Superbikes to remind me I owed him money for a tyre. I'm like, "When have you ever had your tyre checked?" "Ian, you're a rascal," right? I'm like, "I'm not fucking talking about this right now, Ian," right? But it was his wheel, and he was a bit annoyed about it. But our car story's gone. I could tell you a million of them, but
we'll save them for another day.
Absolutely.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. James, thank you so much for your time.
Do you know what?
I know how busy you are, mate, and it's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure, and thank you, everyone, and I hope you enjoy it, and thank you so much for your time as well.
Thanks, James. Ladies and gentlemen, James Haydon.